Hello students, Mr. Yen here. Welcome to Chapter 13, Lesson 1. So, true story students, this is actually one of the first lessons I ever taught. Not this one specifically, but it was a lesson on the Oregon Territory, mountain men, and the Oregon Trail. Uh, so, fond memories. It was a long, long time ago at the North Hills Middle School in the long, long era of 2014. On to the subject. The Oregon Country was much more than what has become the state of Oregon. It included parts of what is now Washington State, Idaho, a large chunk of Canada, and even parts of Wyoming and Montana. In the early 1800s, four countries laid claim to this large Oregon territory. It was Spain, Britain, Russia, and of course, the United States. Today we'll explore what the heck happened to this large chunk of West and how we ended up with so much of it. Okay, the Adams-Onis Treaty is something we've talked about before. Then Secretary of State John Quincy Adams made a treaty with Spain, basically grabbing up Florida. Remember, we kind of manhandled it off of them. But in addition to this, we mentioned it set the borders for New Spain, and that included like Texas, Mexico, and much of the American West and Southwest. So part of that border that was drawn up was what became the border of uh, the northern border of New Spain and what is now the northern border of California, right there. So with that line drawn, that meant that Spain gave up its claims in what was the Oregon Country. So, boom, Spain's knocked out Oregon, down to 3. In 1824, Russia gave up any claims in North America south of Alaska. So that means the Oregon Territory is no longer in contention. Uh, with Russia. Russia no longer has claim there. So that leaves two countries, America and Britain. Britain would be more complicated. They tried to negotiate Britain out of the Oregon Territory, but they ended up compromising on joint occupation, meaning that the territory was open up for settlers from both the United States and Britain. Now, among the first people to settle in the Oregon Territory were the mountain men. They were basically rugged outdoorsman types, such as this fellow down here, that were in the business of fur trapping initially. Specifically, they trapped beaver. Beaverskin hats were all the rage at the time, and the pelts of beavers were in high demand to make these hats. The beaver that were indigenous to Europe were hunted to near extinction, and the American beavers that were plentiful, specifically in the Oregon Territory, and in the almost untouched wilderness of the American West, the beavers were huge, and they made great hats. You can see a fancy pants beaverskin hat right here. They are both water repellent and classy. The beaver pelts were water repellent, so that's why they made such great hats. Now, the mountain men often married native women and even adopted some native clothing and customs. You can see him in his clothing. Now, eventually, the beaver hat craze died down, as did beaver numbers in the region. They basically hunted too many beavers. Now there weren't enough beavers around, so between that and the hat craze, the fad going away, the mountain men had to find something else to do other than trapping beavers all the time. Some settled down to farm. Others became guides for new settlers, like settlers traveling to Oregon on the Oregon Trail, which is what we're moving to right now. In the 1830s, Americans started to head to Oregon. The word on the street was there was fertile farmland. And if there's one thing we learned all year, it's that Americans love the prospect of some fertile farmland. Among the first to settle in Oregon were missionaries, Marcus and Narcissa Whitman. Marcus Whitman was a doctor. He was Dr. Marcus Whitman. The Whitmans built a mission and went about trying to convert the Cayuse Indians as well as providing medical support. He was a doctor after all. Well, things went sour after the natives caught measles brought west by, well, the white man. So, much like natives pretty much throughout the history of the United States, they weren't used to diseases like European diseases. So when they caught them, instead of them getting like a cold, they would just die. So the Cayuse were pretty upset because a lot of their children died from measles, and as such, they attacked the Whitman's missionary and they killed the Whitmans as well as 11 other settlers. So not a good time. That bumps us on to the Oregon Trail specifically. Oregon Trail time. So, despite the fate of the Whitmans, people just didn't really care, and they still moved west because fertile farmland. In 1843, 1,000 immigrants made the trip to Oregon. They were technically immigrants because they were leaving the U.S. for a different country. It was not the U.S. Oregon, remember, joint occupation, not a part of the United States. So after 1843, this trickle of immigrants turned into a stream. Thousands would make the 2,000-mile trip. Families would pack all they have in covered wagons nicknamed prairie schooners. They were called such because they looked like boats from a distance, crossing the sea of grass that is the Great Plains, which at this point was described as a wasteland or a sea of grass. Now, the trek across the nation was dangerous. There were many dangers and diseases, and they had to contend with weather, bad weather. Your book doesn't go into much detail on this, but I found this awesome video with great production value done by the History Channel. You may have heard of this program. It's called America, the Story of Us. This is about a 10-minute clip. This is optional if you want to learn more about the Oregon Trail. Manifest Destiny, what the Rootin' Tootin' Sam Hill is Manifest Destiny, Mr. Yund. Manifest Destiny is the idea, or it was this idea, that the USA would reach across the entire North American continent from east coast to west coast. So not the whole continent, but from east coast to west coast. And this idea was expressed by many prominent people, including presidents and newspapers. It just seemed certain to them that the USA was destined to reach, well, from coast to coast. And that leads us at our last little section. It's called 5440 or Fight. 5440 degrees north latitude was the line where Americans wanted the Oregon Territory to be split between the USA and Britain. We had been sharing it with Britain with the joint occupation, but this sharing land thing was messing with our whole idea of Manifest Destiny. So President Polk supported this idea and compromised with Britain in 1846. Britain didn't like 5440 degrees north latitude, so they compromised and it ended up being 49 degrees north latitude, which was actually the same line that Britain had rejected about 20 years earlier. It was actually 21 years. So the border had been drawn, no more joint occupation. Oregon was now a part of the United States. Huzzah! Alright, for your assignment today, we've got this lovely painting here. It was done by John Gast in 1872 and it's called American Progress, but I typically see it used to express the idea of manifest destiny. For today's assignment, please answer the following question using complete sentences. It will probably be about a paragraph long. How does the left side of the painting compare to the right side of the painting, and what does that represent? Let's take a quick gander here. I see a few things. Left side is dark, right side is bright. What does this woman represent? Maybe like Western civilization or something like that. Over here on the left, I see wild animals, bears and buffalo, and Native Americans. And then in the middle here, you kind of see some hardy mountain-like folk, some covered wagons and cowboys and carriages. And over here on the right, I see agriculture and trains and boats and industry. So just some things to keep an eye on. If you need any more help figuring out how to answer this question, if you can message me, of course, come to office hours, or if you were to say go to Google, ta-da, and type in John Gast, American Progress meaning, M-E-A. Oh, all kinds of stuff comes up. That could be a good source of information. Alright, that's your lesson for today. If you need any help, like I said, you can either look it up or message me. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.